as my wife and I were planning out trusts and financial future for my son and what we needed or what we wanted to be able to leave for him, the question kept coming into my head, well, it's great if he has money, but what world is it going to be in? And, it's interesting. I was listening to your podcast the other day with Ryan Pineda, and he said something, and he said, if not me, then who? And and it echoed with me because I kind of felt the same way. I've spent long enough in this industry to have skills in buildings and understand how they work and understand what's needed to make them work well. And I decided to come into this space to apply it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jack Bosch Show, where we talk about all things real estate, finance, and wealth building. And today we have Jon Weiskopf here, and Jon is doing something very, very interesting and very, very cool in the real estate space. He focuses on sustainability and actually making money by doing positive impact in this world. So without further ado, welcome, Jon. Let's jump right into what does that impact investing and the sustainability even mean. Before we even go, we'll talk about your background and everything later on, but
Sure.
Let's just jump right into it. Welcome to the show.
Sure, thanks, Jack. So, what is impact investing? Impact investing is it's an approach in which we intentionally go out and seek environmental and social outcomes alongside our financial returns. Right? Simply put, we are trying to do more than just return money to investors.
Okay, so if I'm an investor, why would I care about that?
Why wouldn't you? Right? If we look at things, sustainability to me breeds resiliency. Resiliency breeds risk mitigation. And so none of us have a crystal ball. None of us know what's coming, but some of us can read the writing on the wall. So take climatic events. Look at Houston. Look at Texas. Last 3 years, two major climatic events that have impacted utilities, power, all that stuff. If you're a property owner, your guys was in sustainability and say maybe you had solar panels on your roofs, maybe you weren't affected with the power outage. And I think what a lot of people miss when it comes to sustainability and resiliency is the avoided costs. Everybody looks at, if I put this on, I'm going to get this, maybe lower utility rates, maybe this. But what did you avoid, right? How many tenants have lost food? How many tenants have maybe skipped out or fallen, or something that goes wrong, a pump, an ejector pump, a water pump, something on your property fails because you lost power? Yes, we all have insurance, but I think anybody that owns a piece of property knows that while insurance helps you out, the best way to operate is to never use your insurance policy.
Yes. So obviously, my question was a little bit purposefully critically asked to actually elicit exact that kind of answer. So because I'm putting myself into the little bit of the mind of an investor, and says like, hey, I'm investing in a deal but by the way, your kind of properties that you focus on are commercial multifamily, or only multifamily, only commercial, non-multifamily? What kind of properties do you focus on?
Multifamily and mobile home parks. Wow. Anything, and then all focused in the affordability sector. So Class C properties and below. Okay,
interesting. So all right. So you're doing impact investing, you're doing sustainability, you're doing those kind of things. And so which as I take it now, means that you come into, let's say, an apartment building and you add features to it that make that less dependent on power outages and things like that. So you add solar. What else do you do to these kind of properties? What is kind of like a typical list of items that you consider doing to a property in order to make it more sustainable?
Sure. It's all about a healthy home for us, right? It's people first. Our residents on our properties are the reason why we can pay our investors, why we can be profitable in our ventures into real estate. Without them, there's nothing. And when you look at where the world is going, affordability crisis, right? More and more individuals are being pushed out. And so rent, from our perspective, is an uncontrollable piece for us. I can't dictate the market. The market is going to move rents up and down. Sure, I can push a property to achieve something, but that market's going to determine whether it's $1,000 or it's $1,100. That's not me to determine that. What I can determine is my operations. What I can control is my operations and how susceptible I am to outside influences, outside variables. And so I think really with impact investing, it's more about us intentionally focusing on long-term good and long-term actions. Efficient HVAC. Today, even if you do RUBS, right? I put in an efficient HVAC. Most people are going to look at it. Most investors are going to say, "Well, aren't your residents benefiting from all of that?" Sure, they are. But at the same time, as utility rates increase, Jack, the more my residents, and especially in that affordable housing sector, have to pay for utilities, the less they have to pay for rent. So who am I really helping when I'm doing something like that, right? I'm creating buffers. I'm creating resiliency in longevity is really the objective. So we look at...
So in essence, like, let's talk about an HVAC system. So you come in, let's say you bring in brand new air conditioned systems, which they were before 35 years old, but they worked, right? So often in the Class C space, the attitude of the owners is, hey, don't replace it until it completely breaks down, and you don't have to. But the tenants pay for utilities. So if they have a 35-year-old AC system that's just being patched up, they're paying through the noses for air conditioning and heating. When you come in, you put in, let's say, completely throughout the entire property, brand new air conditioned systems that are super efficient and HVAC systems, and as a result, let's just say their utility bill get cut in half from $200 to $100 a month. Is that, let's just say that. So what you're saying is that this allows you eventually, first of all, it keeps you a little buffer. It helps them, but it creates cost for you, is what the critics say. And what your answer is like, yeah, that's true, but eventually it allows me to raise rents by $100 approximately, or by $50 more than I otherwise would have, because they're still paying less than they would be paying somewhere else. Is that about right?
Yeah. Yes. I'm looking farther down the road. Right. So a lot of investors are looking at my dollar today, year one, day one, when I take over that property. How do I spend as little as possible and squeeze the most out of that property? I'm looking at long term. In 5 years from now, I don't know what utilities are going to be. Nobody does. But if you look at history, they're going up fast. Right. Tulsa, Oklahoma, great affordable housing, focused market. Their utilities went up 20% in 2022. The average underwriter for any real estate investment firm out there is projecting 3% utility rate increases, because that's what the national average is. But what happens next year? What happens next year? Again, I brought up Houston earlier, right? Those utility companies, the more they get hit, the more they're going to tell the public utility commissions, we need to raise rates. We can't afford what we're doing. We need to do X, Y, Z. And those costs just continues to get passed down to the user, which is our residents. So how do we control that? How do we mitigate that? So 5 years from now, when I go to sell that property, or 10 years down the line, without that crystal ball, I'm hedging my bet, right? I'm saying that I know things are going to go up. So what can I do today where in 5 years I have a better return, not in 2 years a better return?
And how would that return be better for you versus for the tenants? I understand the tenants are a benefit from it, which makes them ultimately want to stay there longer, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you benefit from it?
Lower maintenance, lower cost, higher NOI, right? The next person that takes over my property is going to be paying utilities in some sense, maybe even within RUBS. RUBS is not 100% pass through.
Right.
But if I can show that my property has, the average resident in my property has $500 a month utilities versus the one next door that's got $700, can I charge more for rent? Can I have more flexibility? Isn't my product better offering for renters? Again, we need to keep our properties filled in order to make money, right? Totally. So sometimes it's not a direct one-for-one.
Do you see that in reality happening, that because you basically drop the utilities in multiple ways, you probably also do window replacement, I would imagine, right? Taking the single pane old ones, and potentially it's very expensive, I know. So it's a
Windows are expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. But if you potentially that would be on the list. And you do HVAC systems, and you mentioned solar so far. So if you take, let's say, on a property where you would do all three of them or two out of three of them, have you done any calculations of how much that actually translates into higher rents for you too?
We do, but we also look at, yes, and it does translate. We also are in the affordability space. So, part of what we have to hedge against is keeping units affordable for the people that are paying and at, affordable rates. Most of these individuals are not individuals with extra paychecks or disposable income. They're people living paycheck to paycheck. So when you tie those things, right, for instance, Jack, if you have a Class A property, it's probably not as critical for you, right? You're more worried about having something that is high performing from an overall aesthetic perspective. Class C, I need to lower my residence expenses as much as I can to ensure that I'm getting checks every month.
So I'm starting to get clarity here. So it's less a play of being able to basically say increase rents because the other costs are higher, because that's actually something I would have challenged, because in my experience for Class Cs, the tenants don't tend to have the sophistication to be able to often say, I'm paying $1,000 over here, over there I'm paying $1,100, but here I have triple pane windows, and I have solar and I have this, so my utility cost is way lower. They're seeing $100 in rent difference, and they're going to where it's cheaper. If the safety and other things are the same, and then the utility comes, and they're like, oh wow, well the utility is high, but they didn't consider that upfront. They don't tend to think longer term often. They just think like, oh, I can save $100 for rent. Let me move from that place to that place. So your thing is not by doing that. I'm able to actually increase rents. Your approach is more by doing that. First of all, I'm creating a better product. Secondly, I'm allowing my tenants to live here at a little bit lower overall cost, but I'm getting the same rent. And as a result, they'll stay with me longer. My maintenance costs are lower. Plus, if I'm putting brand new ACs in and solar, overall, my cost of maintaining that property is way lower. So I'm having more operational savings than actually revenue increase.
Yes. And then when you look at financing, right? When you look at financing, HUD financing, other types of financing, Fannie, Freddie, Mae, a lot of these older building rejuvenation projects look more favorable from those lenders.
Yeah.
Right? Because they see you have a hedge bet against rising utility rates, maintenance, things like that.
Yeah, makes sense. That's a good plan. Cool. All right. And as a side benefit of that, of course, you're doing something good for the world. You're doing something good for the environment. You're using the solar power. You're protecting also from what if a hurricane hits or something, or a big power outage or an ice storm or something that brings the power grid down. And now you're having a property that has solar panels that is semi-self-sufficient, because solar panels, unless you have the batteries, are not really sufficient at night, but at least during the day you can keep the lights on, you can keep the refrigerators working, and you can keep electricity going on. And perhaps even do you play with a battery kind of pack to extend that into the night a little bit? Still,
it's ideal, but it's very expensive. It doesn't. It unfortunately does not pan out as I would love to sit here and say yes, but I can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I even in my own house, I put 86 solar panels on my house. It's a pretty big house with actually 6 air conditions, and right now the solar panels are producing more than I'm consuming, and over the average full year, it's pretty much a wash. I should be having a zero electricity bill, but I don't, because I don't have the battery pack. So I'm feeding in electricity to the grid at this rate, and at night they're charging me this rate to feed it right back out. And that's just unfortunately that way it is, but it just doesn't yet pencil to put myself several large battery packs into the garage. I'm waiting for them to drop in price, and then it becomes sustainable. And at that point, I could be technically completely off the grid. So my question was, if that works better at the larger scale, but it still is cost prohibitive.
Yeah, if you for batteries, you're really looking 10, 20 year out paybacks. So if your plan is to hold the property for that long, I would 100% be looking into spending that capital. But 5 years, 10 years, it's hard. It's hard to justify.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Cool. So now how does your audience, like the actual tenants, how do they react to that? Walk me through that. When a new tenant comes in, do they care at the moment, or do they care only once they're in it and start realizing, oh my God, this is so much cheaper to live here than somewhere else?
Not all that much do they care, but but what we look at it is it's from a lack of knowledge and education. And so part of the impact investing approach is educating. And it goes beyond just what we've done. It's what those individuals need to thrive, to be more self-sufficient from a personal level. Right? A lot of those individuals in affordable housing, they don't have financial education. They don't understand the concept of even $10 a month in a savings account could actually lead to something more, right? Yes, maybe not the impact that our investors are getting with good solid returns, but trying to teach and trying to show them that investing, that putting this money aside, right? So it's a combination. A lot of our focus in impact investing is on the people and how do we help them better situate themselves to be good citizens. And it's not just for themselves, but for
what do you do that in terms of education? How does it look like in real life?
Sure. The most basic is credit reporting, right? It's when I entered this space a couple of years ago, I found it quite interesting that applications require, apartment applications require credit checks, but the average person in a C-class property trying to, applying to has no credit at all. Mm-hmm. So you're asking for something that they don't have. A lot of those individuals will then charge more for lack of good credit or lack of credit in general, further stretching the thing. So credit building is one of them. We try to bring resources through nonprofit organizations that allow us to offer more at little to no cost for ourselves. Resident engagement is a big one. And I know a lot of individuals, there's a lot of good landlords out there that do a lot of what we do. They just don't call it impact.
Yeah. So do you have does your leasing manager or actually help people build their credit or how does that work?
We offer the credit building services. As part of our lease when residents come on board, and not in all properties, but in some of our properties, we actually pay for the fee for the first year for our residents to motivate them to sign up. I think it's a few dollars a month extra that we pay, that comes down off their rent that we're willing to cover. Fannie had a program that helps cover some of those costs. I believe it's running out now. I think it was only offered for a short amount of time. But it's small little things, Jack. These are not big, audacious goals. These are small little things that change people's way of doing over time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for example, one of the things, I realized that in my own company, for example, we have a team of both in real estate and in coaching, education, things like that, Michelle and I, my wife and Michelle and I, we spent the last 22 years actively learning about money, right? We learn about money, we like how money does work, how loopholes in the tax loopholes, things, how to build wealth, how to maintain wealth, how to save wealth, how to like all these different things. So we've become PhDs in not just making money, but actually keeping money and building wealth and things like that. Yet nobody out there does that, almost nobody. So we started in our company something like Lunch and Learns about that subject, where we basically usually like 1 to 2 times a month, we just do on a certain day, put the notification out there. It's like, hey, I'm going to be on Zoom. Here's the link. Join me if you want to. And people can ask questions about financial things that to me seem the easiest thing in the world, but to somebody else, it's it's like something that is completely showstopper, and they don't know how to break through it. And that happens in any kind of company, in any kind of role. And we have well-educated people in our company, wonderful people. And it's still, nobody gets taught finances anywhere unless you went to business school. And even then, you only get taught corporate finances. You don't get taught like normal finances and how to make my life work and how to make their life work and in the environment that we live here and so on. And so we're doing that on that level. So I can totally see how offering that as a tenant basis is something really cool. So I like that. And how's the response from the tenant basis?
We're still collecting data on that, so I honestly can't answer fully. And it's also some people understand the value, some people don't. I think some people want to understand the value, Jack. Other people don't, and I've kind of come to a realization that while we're out to hopefully impact the masses, there's always going to be a percentage of individuals that we won't be able to help.
Yeah, and that's a good realization because
it's hard. It sucks.
It's hard, but I agree. But you're just gonna grind yourself up if you realize that if you really have your goal set at 100%, because some people just simply don't want to be helped. That's just how it is.
And it's interesting. I met somebody. There's a company called Roots, Invest with Roots, and they have this very interesting program. I told the founder I want a copy. I'll say it now because I think it's do this. They have their own Regulation A fund, but what they actually do is they allow residents in their single family home portfolio to take their deposits and invest it into the fund. And then they give them a portal and they allow them to actually see their money grow. Now they can only access that money when they leave, I think, but it's one thing to teach. It's another thing to actually put somebody in a position to use that knowledge, right? Knowledge is great, but knowledge is nothing without execution.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another concept is, I forgot the name of the book, but it's something that in a low key we tried to do one time, but we didn't have the manpower to actually fully implement it. It's basically hiring somebody in your company, if you're big enough, or in this case would be on a tenant basis or variation of it, I think the book is called Dream Manager. I don't know if you read it, but basically it's a guy with a company with a big call center, and I forgot the name of the author, but he basically hired somebody, and the call center are notorious for their high turnover, which is somewhat like Class C apartment buildings are notorious for high turnover, right? So what he did is he basically hired somebody like a financial planner by profession, and he had every one of their employees meet with them over time. And the question was always, what is part of your dreams? What is your dream? And somebody said, I want to buy a house. And they're like, well, exactly. So in order to buy a house, you need to have certain savings. You need to have certain credit. They started working with them on that process. And all of a sudden, the cleaning lady of the office building was able to afford her own house, and it changed her life, and other kind of things, other things in that were accomplished. And through the process of that and a few other things, they got the turnover down from an industry average of 600% per year or something like that, down to like a 5 or 10% turnover per year. And obviously in that industry, in any industry, hiring new, and in our industry, bringing in a new tenant turnover is the most expensive thing you can have, because they leave, now you got to market it, you have an empty unit, and you got to fix the unit up again, versus if they stay, there's no cost and there's continued revenue. So by doing that, and that's the same as an employer, the biggest cost you have is employee turnover. By dropping that, it had the benefit of helping all their employees, and at the same time also making the company way more profitable. So in essence, you're on the same path, doing pieces of that through the utilities and through some of the human intervention on your properties, and that's very beautiful. So I applaud you for that. That is I think very visionary of you. Now, where does that vision come from? Where did that come from? From your background? I mean, now we can talk about your background. You worked as, I think, head of engineering for in some areas, and in Apple for a long time. And Apple is obviously known for some of their conscientiousness about certain things in life. And or where did that all come from?
Well, I've been in sustainability for 20 years. I was a mechanical engineer, designed buildings, built buildings, did facilities management. And so my desire to push that into the real estate industry has always been there. Over 20 years, I've watched how old the real estate and construction industry continues to just maintain itself at. Very, very few changes in how we do things, the approaches to things. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine over the years. Apple, I think, definitely opened me up to social impact, but it was really when I became a father. I have a 4.5-year-old named Wyatt, and he is my blue-eyed of blue-eyed capital. Him and my wife, Danielle, both have blue eyes. I became a dad and just started questioning, what am I leaving my son? I was working too much. I was not really building anything. I thought I had hit success. But I look back and said, this isn't really working more to work more, to work more, to work more. It was not getting me anywhere. And, as my wife and I were planning out, trusts and financial future for my son and what we needed or what we wanted to be able to leave for him, the question kept coming into my head, well, it's great if he has money, but what world is it going to be in? Mm-hmm. Right? He might have money, but what does the world, right? What type of communities is he going to be surrounded with? And how do we help other people move? Helping one person helps another person, helps another person, helps another person. And, regardless of your view on things, we are a community. We do not live in this world by ourselves. And so the more that we can help individuals, I think the more power that we have as a country, as a community, as a city, town, and the world to just live longer and thrive more. It's interesting. I was listening to your podcast the other day with Ryan Pineda, and he said something, and he said, if not me, then who? And and it echoed with me because I kind of felt the same way. I've spent long enough in this industry to have skills in buildings and understand how they work and understand what's needed to make them work well. And I decided to come into this space to apply it.
Well, very nice. And I couldn't agree with you more. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's sometimes, particularly looking at the political environment right now and everything, she's like, I'm low-key worried about my country, is what she says. I was like, well, it's not just low-key. You should be high-key worried. I don't know if that's a proper way to say it, but you should definitely be worried about it, and with all that's coming. So I like that, and like, I think we think different ways. I hadn't thought about it, to be honest. I hadn't thought about implementing it from the point of view of your viewpoint of just simply providing updated infrastructure for my tenants so that they could have a little bit of savings and therefore they stay longer. That's something I got to ponder a little bit more. But we have always been big in creating communities by, for example, doing things like by doing things like offering, for example, free tutoring to the children on the property.
Amazing.
So we teamed up on one of our properties with a local community college, and they had some kids that were learning. They wanted to become teachers, and they needed to add hours of some kind of teaching. So it's like, great, they need the hours, we need the teaching. So let's have them come into our leasing office, and every twice a week or so at this time, we let the notifications go around, and a bunch of kids showed up and wanted to be tutored. And because again, Class C doesn't have money for tutoring. Right? You don't have, if you pay $1,000 for an apartment and I don't know, a few $100s for a car, and you're making $2,300 a month, you don't have money left over to say, sure, I'll get you a tutor for $80 an hour. That just, or whatever they cost. And so we've offered some tutoring, and the thinking is exactly that. The thinking is like, hey, first of all, who is that attractive to? And in my mind, it's attractive to the best kind of tenants we want, the ones that actually care about their children's education. And it's not interesting to the deadbeat that just wants to be left alone and deals drug in the hallway. Right? They want the least intervention as possible. But the ones that are like that have kids and they care about their kids and they, if they could, they would give that to their kids. They're like, well, if I move over there, I'll pay rent of perhaps $50 more than over here, but my kids get tutoring twice a week. Yeah, let's go there. And then they tell their friends, and then you combine that with actually good maintenance and good taking care of your tenants. And all of a sudden you're building a community where your property stands out over everyone else. So our thinking went that way, not necessarily from a air condition. We still just kept repairing the old air conditions and not replacing them systematically. But I got to think about that one a little bit more.
But it's all tied together, right? You're providing a healthy home in a certain way, and healthy home is not just good air conditioning; it's support systems, it's resources, right? And I think if you look at the world that's changing, I have this little line: ignorance will bite the status quo.
Yeah,
the times are changing, things are happening. Whether you believe in climate change or not, guess what? Look out the window, right? So you might not care about it, but your bank account will one day. And if you're an owner of those buildings that has old infrastructure, there's going to come a time when that old infrastructure is going to come and bite you. And it might be when you go to sell, it might be on a catastrophic event. But even residents are changing, right? As affordability gets worse, you look at the growing, Gen Z population, those individuals that are going to become all of our residents one day, right? And even in Class B property, right? Those individuals are expecting more and more and more these days. Their access to more and more information, more and more data on the internet, more and more reasons to say, why don't I get this? Because over there, they have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Makes total sense. Great. So what do you do? Do you actively invest right now? You actively expand? How can somebody find out more about you? You want to give us your contact information? Tell us a little bit about how if somebody wants to contact you, is there a way for them to get in on your deals or work with you, or you have information about it, or just tell us a little bit if somebody wants to learn more about what you do, how you do it, how can they contact you?
Yeah, go on LinkedIn, Jon Weiskopf. I do all my sharing and posting is on LinkedIn. My company website is www.blueeyedcapital.com. And there you can sign up for, we have a impact investing newsletter and access to all of our deals. Most of our deals are for accredited investors only. That is one of our main focuses. But, we ask everybody to sign up. Part of our mission is to educate. If I can educate people, then I find myself being successful. We are actively looking. We are always having deals. About to close next month on an assisted living facility out in Florida that we're really proud of. And we just recently closed on a mobile home park out in Texas.
Wonderful.
So we still have some spots in that impact fund. Actually, it's accredited only. So, please, we look for people that have the same values as us. We think that's important when it comes to those that choose to join Blue Eyed Capital in our mission. Is we want you to see the same way, see the same vision that we have. So awesome. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, with that said, then let's wrap this up. It was a pleasure talking to you. I love speaking to somebody who is like-minded to me. And I was particularly excited to talk about some of the sustainability measures because, again, that's something that we don't yet do a whole lot of. And I know it's time for us to look into that more with our own multifamily properties. So with that said, thank you very much. And this concludes our episode right now. Make sure, as always, you give us a 5-star review if you're watching it or listen to it on iTunes. If you're watching it on YouTube, give us that thumbs up, give us that follow, and share it with your friends, because that's how we get the word around about this podcast. All right, with that said, thank you very much. Bye-bye.